we've lived in a, well, depending on where you are in the world, I'll just say here, if you're here in the West, especially America, you've lived in a very protected time for quite a while on
Mm.
many levels. And so we just don't get it. And I had the incredible advantage of, or luck, when I was a youngster, being in the military and going around and seeing the world and seeing a lot of just destroyed ghettos and things like that. And I'd say, look, I admire some of the Hong Kong protesters. They're doing things like, I saw these whole streets where they've epoxied, where they glued bricks to the street.
Oh, that's crazy. I
And,
know.
and I'm like, that's badass. You guys are, this is a street fight. This is no kidding, to slow the advance of, I guess, cops coming to beat them up, basically.
Well, those armored personnel carriers couldn't get through that. They get bogged down in there. Tires get stuck because they can't get the
Yeah.
forward momentum. So somehow they found a way of putting all those bricks in there to stop the armored personnel carriers from advancing forward. And then they started pelting them with Molotov cocktails, and they couldn't reverse out of there.
So it's funny. The extremes are happening. They're taking place. Well, like in Hong Kong, I mean, really, that's not, to me, as far as I can tell, that's not getting a lot of world media. At least I'm not really seeing it. But yet, tremendous stuff is going on there. Have you been following that at all?
I sure have, because I'm making my decisions to leave Asia based on what's happening down there. But what has happened is China's put AI in charge of the response measure here for the Hong Kong. So they're using artificial intelligence now, not human-based, to decide what to do. Well, anyway, this AI program said close it off like the Warsaw ghettos. And what they did is they closed down sections of the city so nobody could get in as they were escaping from one part, and they funneled them into the university. Now, after they funneled them into PolyU, unbeknownst to me at that time either, 99% of all internet traffic through Hong Kong is housed in the buildings in PolyU there. That's at the university. So by the police going in and taking control of the university, they also took over the internet hub of Hong Kong under their control now. That has 99% of all traffic. Now, secondly, what they're doing is they're trying to look back through different ISP records to see who has downloaded the Telegram app or the Line app, these encrypted communication device apps. And then what's told to me, and I really can't, I'm still, and I can't, should I say it or, okay, this is with a grain of salt that I've heard from two different people, that the AI program is now talking about anybody who had partaked or even one iota looked at, saw, seen, partaked, has downloaded the app, whatever, in terms of this revolution inside Hong Kong to get more autonomy back, is to be loaded on trains and taken into China for trial. And they're talking about emptying out 25% of the city and repopulating it back with good, hardcore communists that will support everything that the party's doing. And this is what the AI program wants. AI's in control of the response now. And you can see just before, it was just regular, always as it was going. Police got more abusive on the responses. Students and protesters lockstep, and everything kept stepping up. But they never had, used maneuvers of cordoning off parts of the city with no escape on double barriers to force people into different parts of the city and right into the internet hub, which is a real interesting one, how they did that. Now the PLA and the Hong Kong police and military control the internet hub. Now, also the roadblocks are going up. And when I say roadblocks, I'm not talking about two guys standing there, can I see your ID to go into your neighborhood? They're putting up the concrete barriers with barbed wire to get around the city and the curfew in. So again, if you're going to invade a country or do whatever you do, that's the first things you go for is lines of communication and the actual infrastructure, roads in and out, so you can control who moves in and out of the city. And they blocked it off too, where neighborhoods are no longer connected, like they're actually starting to build walls between neighborhoods. And I swear to you, this reminds me of the Warsaw ghettos, exactly what they did in World War II, to start to divide people up before they exited them out on the trains. And it's so scary that this is what the AI is recommending, that they remove anybody who ever fought back against the regime there, to take them out of the city and repopulate them. Now, I have seen this before. I'm wondering if the world will let it go on or not, because the next thing that's going to happen is if they shut off the internet in Hong Kong, the global financial tsunami would ripple through in seconds, because the overnight money that's in there in Asia to come back out the next day is not going to come back out. But you out there listening, your banks are overnight lending in the interbank rates here. We come back to the central banking again. If that locks up, they're going to call banking holidays everywhere, and they won't let any money move out. So if you have crypto and you have an internet access, you still have your money, and you can trade between peers. Because like you said, if you want 0.00001 for a piece of fruit, and I'm super hungry and my bank's locked up and I can't get any money out of the ATM like Cyprus or Greece, I will happily part with that 0.0001 so I can eat, and we have a fair trade of value then. And then we can start to see real world uses of crypto when the traditional banking system does its little quirky dance and locks up everything on purpose, no less. I don't think it'll never let a good crisis go to waste. I don't think it's going to be on purpose. But here's another next case use for Bitcoin or for crypto. And we could do it faster with Stellar or DuByne. That stuff moves in seconds. Bitcoin's still clunky, it's slow, it's expensive on the fees. You're talking Stellar, and you can in about 2 minutes, and it costs like a cent or something to send any amount of money for Stellar. Now, by the way, Stellar has been the one that's been planned for everyday transactions after Bitcoin goes up to around 10 million USD.
XLM, that's Stellar, right? XLM, I think, is it's
Stellar, XLM. And XRP is Ripple, and that's a central bank. They own it. They can cut you off at any time. It's not, you don't own anything. If you own Ripple, there's no keys, man. You just have the coin, and they control it. So again, you could be sitting on a ton of Ripple, and then they just turn it off, and you lost your access. But it's for central banking too. Ripple is 4 banks, buy banks, 4 banks.
Oh yeah, it's kind of a cash grab and a manipulation of the crypto market. It's strange. I've never quite understood anybody who enjoys Ripple. There's a kind of they call it the XRP army, people who are really into it, and I'm like, whatever. I just out of principle don't have anything to do with it. But yeah, anybody who thinks what we're seeing in China, between China and Hong Kong, can't happen, as David's describing, I would say, we've lived in well, depending on where you are in the world, I'll just say here, if you're here in the West, especially America, you've lived in a very protected time for quite a while on many levels. And so we just don't get it. And I had the incredible advantage of, or luck, when I was a youngster, being in the military and going around and seeing the world and seeing a lot of just destroyed ghettos and things like that. And I'd say, look, I admire some of the Hong Kong protesters. They're doing things like, I saw these whole streets where they've epoxied, where they glued bricks to the street.
Oh, that's crazy. I know.
And I'm like, that's badass. You guys are, this is a street fight. This is no kidding, to stop, to slow the advance of, I guess, cops coming to beat them up, basically.
Well, those armored personnel carriers couldn't get through that. They get bogged down in there. Tires get stuck because they can't get the forward momentum. So somehow they found a way of putting all those bricks in there to stop the armored personnel carriers from advancing forward. And then they started pelting them with Molotov cocktails, and they couldn't reverse out of there. Mm-hmm. Like the craziest thing, man. Then they started shooting live rounds to get everybody out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they opened up with automatic weapons down there to make everybody disperse, because if they were coming out of there, they were going to get jumped on and things. So they opened up with the autos, and that's where it's going down there now. So it's taking amazing. A definite step up. It's shoot on sight now too. So whatever is this new regulations is shoot on sight. So if the police feel they're threatened in any way, shape, or form, if they bust off a live round, they have no hey, it's fine. It's shoot on sight now. So
definitely
going up a tick there.
It is, and they actually, I saw an article about that, about the bricks, and they actually found a way to glue 2 like this and put 1 on top, and that actually hangs up the APCs and such. So these guys are ingenuitive. So you have a modern military, and they're stocked with Stone Age technology. And I can tell you, having been in the military, yeah, that works. You might think, I'm a badass, we've got our F-18 or this or that. I'm like, well, here's the thing about an Abrams tank, same as an APC. You gotta breathe. And if people throw Molotov cocktails at you, same as in World War II and World War I, you can't breathe. So you might have an 88 millimeter cannon and 30 caliber machine guns, but you can't breathe. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna jump out and make a run for it. So yeah, that's one thing I would say. They might be mighty right now, China, and taking on Hong Kong, but realize, you ask the Russians after they finally lost, after their ass had been handed to them in Afghanistan. You know, Stone Age technology beats technology more often than not. And as far as the ruthlessness, would a government, would China do something crazy like you're mentioning with the ghettos and then training people out? Well, look at recent history. Look at Pol Pot.
The city out too. He emptied out Phnom Penh and made everybody walk out with just what they owned, and he came back and they had these spooky photos of an entirely empty city.
Oh,
And nobody
yeah.
blinked an eye. Nobody blinked an eye.
Nobody did, and nobody, exactly. I would say look at Stalin and Lenin. Look at
Yes.
the purge. Look, I mean, look at the damage done to Germany via the Berlin Wall after. Look at the torture of the people on the wrong side of it. Look at the vindictiveness of world leaders, of these babies that kill millions during a temper tantrum. So if what you're mentioning happened in Hong Kong, it would not even, given world history, given the last 100 years, 200 years, it would not be even a very big event. Do you know what I mean? It really would not be something out of the ordinary or unusual whatsoever. It would be common historically. So people should be, watching. And I've always found it so funny. The PLA, come on, if that's not just like torturous, the People's Liberation Army, whatever.
Yeah, let me
Sure.
throw a caveat there. They've already rounded up 1 million Uyghur Muslims out west in the Xinjiang province out there.
Mm.
1 million are in concentration, I'm sorry, skills training camps as
Mm.
it's trained.
Oh,
1 million, but nobody's even blinked half of an eye about 1 million people being rounded up out in Xinjiang. So do you think they would really blink an eye about 1 million or 2 being taken out of Hong Kong and replaced with party hardcores? And then they could have a whole spy network inside. You put a new party hardcore person on floor number 5 in the building, and they're the eyes and ears for the rest of the party. And anybody, if you take that many people out, they're going to be really terrified that you got like spies in the buildings and you say one thing wrong and you're the next girl to go out of there on a train too, So
oh
it's a
yeah.
make or break for Hong Kong right now. I mean, it's truly a make or break. I mean, those guys are talking about grandmas with kitchen knives fighting the soldiers that far down the battlefield there before they let everything go. So when you're
Well,
starting to hear statements like
yeah.
that, where grandmas are going to pick up their knives to fight the PLA coming in, I mean, sheesh, how far down can it go?
Yeah, well, people can be tough. I mean, you look at Sparta, um, even if you got through the men, the women were not going to be easy.
Yeah, true, huh?
It's like the kids and the women. No, no, no. You're not going to go and rape and pillage in that city, and that it's not going to go so well. And if you do win, there won't be many left. So you really couldn't win that battle. That's, of course, America. Behind every blade of grass, there's a redneck with an AR. So bring it.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. It's just not going to go the way you think. It isn't. Well, one thing I am seeing also is with evolutionary leaps is health. Yeah, I mean, people. I have seen a real urgency that I'm seeing a lot of people who are aware of these things to get healthy, because as this happens and you have more and more increasing cosmic rays, like one thing I notice is the Schumann resonance. If you watch the Schumann resonance, you can see it every day. I'll put a link in the show note, a good site or two, where you can view what it's doing every day and you can update it in real time and you can see. And I wish there was a place that actually did like Schumann resonance alerts. Maybe I'll have to make that. But basically, oftentimes it's doing nothing, but it cranks. And historically, it seems like it's cranking up more and more and more. And it just goes off the charts for a while. And it gets to the point where you can feel it, you can notice it. I'll go, oh, I feel a little funny. I feel like my little Earth's resonance is not correct. And you go and you look and boom, it's off the charts. And so it seems like health is essential at this time. Maybe it's always essential, but it seems like you really need your natural human instincts and your health to be able to navigate and function during basically a energy change on your planet, which is going to be within you also. If you're not well, if you don't feel normal, if you don't feel you know what I'm saying? If you're not connect it to the Schumann resonance in your planet, and you're not healthy, and you're not thriving, and your natural instincts and senses don't work, and your body's not functioning correctly, you really need to be thriving in body, mind, and spirit to cruise through this and ride that evolutionary leap that is happening. Because if your energy is not right physically, mentally, spiritually, then you're going to miss the wave. Maybe you'll paddle and catch the next one, but I want the first one.
And also then if you could do an indicator as well with the KP index. Now, what if the KP index from the solar wind and the energetic flow from our sun to our planets diminished, and then you get the Schumann resonance that spikes at the same time? Well, that'd be an interesting thing to look at, is the ratio of that. I don't think that one causes the other. I think they could double on top of each other, because when you get to these KP0, it has real health effects on humans anyway, where psychosis, as well as, you know, heart attacks, arrhythmias, these kind of things occur during KP0. Much like the Santa Ana winds have an effect, you know, when people really start to get agitated and fight, and there's a lot more violence and things with the Santa Ana winds with those positively charged ions. Same thing when there's no solar wind coming and our magnetosphere has a chance to puff out. Magnetically, you know, we're being affected. Our brains are having some definite electromagnetic effect on them with a KP0. And then couple on top of that, Schumann resonance, there's got to be some connection there between extreme events and maybe an overcoupling of both of those factors or indicators.
Yeah, it's always fun to do to measure. Yeah, that'd be great to look at the KP index next to the
I'm going to
Schumann
look at it right
resonance.
now when you're talking right here. It's
Yeah,
a super one. I already have it on my phone.
Yeah, and see like what I'll look at the Schumann resonance while we're talking here and see if it's there. It is.
There's a Schumann resonance.
It's cranking up. So it's cranking today. It's big. It's off the charts today, big time.
And then if we could couple in the solar wind on top of that, and then take a look at it. Let's see what we got here. This is off NOAA's prediction center. So this is what we were looking at right here with the KP index. Let me come this way.
So is that high or is that low? Is that?
It's way higher than it was before. It was at 0.
Okay, now the Schumann is way off the charts. It's at.
Okay, so what you'll be looking for is a 0 KP with very, 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 very little solar wind, and then a high spike on this, and I think you would get like a crazy effect out of that.
The power
personally.
is that.
I think because the KP now there's some wind kicking at us, and now there's some more pressure and a few things on top of us here. When I'm trying to see if I can grab, I screen grab this thing.
The power is the power is at 57 right now for
so take a look at what it was
Schumann.
before. This is what it was before. You see how there was none.
0,
yeah. And this was back on the 19th, 18th, 17, 18, 19, and 20. These 4 days, there was almost no solar wind coming at the planet. There was almost very little particulate coming, energetic pressure, if you will, coming at us. And then when we look at that today compared to what you're seeing on that, it's very different, because you can see how much more there is comparatively. You know, I wish I could put those side to side, but you can see how we're getting up into the KP, 2s and 3s and 4s. So it looks like there's a little more solar wind pressure coming in now.
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot. Yeah, this is really intense.
So what I'm looking for is a 0 KP where there's no solar wind pressure coupled with a spike in the Schumann resonance. That's what I think. There might be a magic formula in there somewhere to see civil unrest or how people behave differently, and look for major world events to occur in those points from this point forward.
That would be a very good page to make, for those things were, charted alongside of each other, and you could look at events that are happening, because this started about 3 a.m. UTC on the 23rd today, and usually we're down at about like 10. I'm not sure how they measure this exactly, but
yeah, it's between 8 and 10 somewhere. I've seen it as high as 40, and that's a crazy reading.
Today, right now, it is 57.
What? I've never seen it that high.
I've never seen it.
The highest I've ever seen it is 40.
Yeah, I know. So there we go. There's a big view. 57. That thing is roaring right now. So these are things, and if you're working on that health, if you're working on body, mind, spirit health, you're doing your yoga, you're doing whatever you're doing, you're working out, hitting the gym, eating your organic food, keeping your body clean, cleansing it, scrubbing it inside and such like that. And you got your good spiritual practice, your good intellectual practice. I mean, then I think you're going to be riding these things and you're going to be doing well. Because I mean, we're built to thrive. We're built to take it, you know. So we can take a crank and Schumann resonance, but it's all about, is it affecting you positively, or at least if you're getting kind of ground down by it, you understand. You go, oh yeah, I feel kind of like, that's a great one for people. I'd say, hey, start following these things. Look at the KP and look at the Schumann. Look at them side by side every day and think about it. How did I feel? What happened in the world? What was going on? Because these measurements, they work. They really do. You'll start to say like, what, you know, how did I feel? How do I feel when the Schumann is really high? Is my energy good or is it low? How's my mood? Am I grumpy? Am I euphoric? It's just something. And then eventually you'll start to feel a certain way. And then you'll go look and go, yep, I could have guessed exactly what the KP and the Schumann were doing, just by the way I feel.
Yeah, because those are energetic reflections of the world around you. Yeah, it's an energetic reflection of what you can't see with your eyes, but can be measured electromagnetically.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's taking you and giving you a different range of vision, literally, outside your visual spectrum.
Yes, that's what we should be doing, because we have all these meters. Like we can look at the Schumann resonance and we can look at it and go, okay, we can see the KP index, but you have a meter inside you. You know, you can feel them. And that's a good way to train your internal meter, your internal feeling, just because you can. That is a great exercise. Yeah, if you want to be a natural human, if you want to ride the wave, just start following these things and feel and go, okay, now on my own meter, I bet you, given just a week or a month or so, you could probably tell somebody if they asked you what the Schumann resonance was doing and what the KP was doing and other ones. So anyway, there you go. Tune in to space weather.
Next really time we go to zero, I'm going to call you and go, Craig, what's
going on? I'm like, I'm carving BTC in the sidewalk.
It is stones. I'm saying enjoy every minute, because the food's abundant now and it's plentiful, and we should enjoy every last morsel and be so grateful and thankful that we have food. You know, the pork roast section, and talk, you know, listen to people's jaws drop on the ground for paying $60 for a 2-pound prime cut of a roast or something you put in the oven. The prices are exponentially up on the prime cuts of meat, hams up, porks up, roasts are up, everything. Of just 20 basic items that you could have a price of last year compared to this year, or even a 6-month interval, is going through a supermarket. I remember these black beans were 57 cents a can. Now they're 97 cents a can, or whatever it is. Could be a million things. But I encourage you to take a look at the price differences and listen to the conversations in the stores.
Oh, definitely. And, you know, a place we could get that, I'll see if I can find a contact. You know who knows? The best inventory control in the nation is actually Walmart. And if you can find the right person in their IT department, they could shoot you graphs. They could give you charts and graphs of that to a level of perfection. And so definitely, as we wrap up, because I don't want to keep you forever, I'm very glad that you did survive your experience with Extinction Rebellion. I like to call them Georgia Guidestone Rebellion myself personally, because I think that's what they're fighting for. And it always truly is amazing when they get like pulled off a train or something like that and tossed on the ground. They're very surprised, and that always gets me. They really are very surprised when they find that in general, most people just don't appreciate them. It's such an incredible shock to them that they're not appreciated. It always seems to catch them totally off guard. So when you kicked Extinction Rebellion or Georgia Guidestone Rebellion out, were they shocked? Were they able to comprehend that people thought different?
Yeah, so the Extinction Rebellion people they're not used to any pushback.
Mm-hmm.
See, what I've noticed in the UK is everybody just instantly gave them the power. Like, oh, it's Extinction Rebellion, they can disrupt. Oh, we have to sit here and wait because it's Extinction Rebellion. And then it started where they pulled that person off the train, and that was it. They lost their power. Because directly after that, there was like a whole spate of incidents that probably weren't most widely reported, but were being reported in the UK because they had to report on it. But I'm sure it didn't make much traction globally because they want that movement to continue. But while I was in the UK, a bunch of Extinction Rebellion people in London tried to, hold hands across a crosswalk. There were about 30 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like hours after they pulled the people off the top of the train. Light turned green. Everybody just took off. Man, you should have seen them running like roaches to trying to go to safety because people weren't having it anymore. And then there was another girl that was trying to do her solo thing with her and her boyfriend, maybe. I don't know. There were a couple of them. And she tried to stand in front of a crosswalk and block part of it off. And then this one guy got out of his car that she blocked. He walked up to her, grabbed her smartphone, and
Ah.
threw it into the middle of traffic. And she just started breaking down and crying, and then walked off the side of the road. And he's like, get out of my way. And it was like incident after incident. So anyway, Piers and I are in there. And, you know, the four of us, me, Mark, Sandy, and Piers are in there doing our presentation. It was a 4-hour gig in the Glastonbury Town Hall. But those two, the guy and the girl, came in to disrupt the place in the beginning, and they were super angry and like agitated. But when we all stood up, they go, oh shit. They weren't expecting that. Like they didn't expect 5 guys to just stand up and walk right at him and going, you're leaving right now. So anyway, there were others of their friends waiting out on the street that quickly left, because one of the guys who was at the door that was, you know, directing people in is like, yeah, there's this group of people waiting down there. So I am sure that they were trying to feel out the situation to like start the ruckus and then send a phone message or whatever. And then they were going to get a group of other ones to come in. Now we'd put, you know, notices and posters around Glastonbury about our talk about the sun, you know, it's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Let's talk about real climate debate. Let's talk, if you have any ideas, we invite you to come along. Let's talk about how the sun's affecting, and talk about historical cycles of the sun and how it's affected society. And we're starting to see some of the same repeats. So anyway, this is what our, you know, the conference poster was about. Sandy went up and put about 30 of them around Glastonbury. She's like, Dave, I can't believe it. They're all ripped down now.
Yeah.
So we went and put our own up with, and we laminated them, and then we had the zip ties. Sure enough, came back a few hours later and they were ripped down. Somebody actually took the time and powered or ripped those down out of the plastic, out of the zip ties. Unbelievable. But, you know, once the Extinction Rebellion people, we got them out in the hallway, their demeanor changed so quickly from being super aggressive and like, hey, you're lying, to, oh, why don't we have a debate? Yeah, let's talk a little bit about it. The one girl was like, you're filming us like a bunch of Scientologists. How dare you? And we're like, how dare you come in and interrupt our meeting? It was just ridiculous. And then they had no recourse for any kind of logical discussion whatsoever. That's all I'm going to say. In the beginning, guys swearing like a sailor, like I'd have to go bleep, 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 bleep. I don't even know if you hear the conversation. There's so much swearing. And then he's like, I am a climate scientist. I know the weather's changing. And then John was like, well, really, what kind of climate scientist are you? And he goes, I'm an expert in renewable energy. What? That's not climate science, dude. That's tech. And then from there, he was very specific, because John Hickman, who runs Primitive Ways, Wild Crafting Channel, knows more about LED grow lights and the renewable systems than you can imagine, because he lived off grid and off grid for 7 full years. He trained himself primitive skills, starting fires with bows and all. He forgoed electricity for months at a time, where he would come back and be super happy that he would recharge a battery off a solar panel. Was like 5-star living for him, right? So he knows renewable energy. He knows all the grow lights. That's his specialty, is testing grow lights and grow systems in greenhouses. That's his real professional specialty. So then he went right into this guy. You're an expert in renewable energy. Tell me what kind. And as soon as that happened, oh man, those Extinction Rebellion people just clammed up, and all they did was start hurling insults. They had no argument. And then they ended up, after they knew they were outnumbered and out, like talked, if you will, just in a sense of let's compare ideas. They're out-idea'd. They scurried out the door. Mm-hmm. But the thing was, the other person Mike was up at the front door, and he's like, yeah, there was another group of people that left just shortly before them. And he's like, yeah, there were another group of people out here, right here on the street. So it was quite the exciting time. And I'm so thankful that they thought enough of our information was so dangerous for the public to view or hear that they had to come in and disrupt it. I find that as a badge of honor, just like I would a Wikipedia entry under my video. So Extinction Rebellion, thank you for validating our information as being the truth.